infallible by any means. Okay. So we looked before that a fallacy is a bad argument, but the reason these particular fallacies have been given names and singled out is because they find they're easy to make. These are mistakes that are easy to make, and they occur often, involve easily made mistakes. But also, even though they're logically bad arguments, they still have a certain psychological persuasiveness about them, and that's one of the reasons why they're used and why they occur. I pointed out that very often people use the term non sequitur. They say somebody committed a non sequitur, or that's a non sequitur. A non sequitur is not the name of a particular fallacy, but literally it means it does not follow. In other words, a non sequitur can be any piece of reasoning where the conclusion simply does not follow logically from the premises. Remember, we said that what makes an argument is that link between premises and conclusion, where if the premises are true, either in a deductively valid argument, it guarantees the truth of the conclusion, or in a good inductive argument, it makes the truth of the conclusion more probable than not. But in a non sequitur, then the conclusion does not follow from the premises. Now, again, you don't want to get confused here. Your texts and people who discuss these usually, just to make it easier to study them, like to group these fallacies in different classes or groups, and there's more than one way to put them together. Okay, some logic books will differ a little bit as to what the groups are and what they put into what group. But Hurley's got a pretty good standard, grouping of them. So the first group of fallacies are called fallacies of relevance. But maybe a better term would be fallacies of irrelevance. Because what I said before is the one thing fallacies in these groups have in common is that the premises are irrelevant to the truth of the conclusion. In other words, even if the premises are true, they do nothing to establish the truth of the conclusion. In other words, the person who commits one of these fallacies looks like they're giving us evidence for the truth of the conclusion, looks like they're giving us a reason to accept the conclusion, but it's an illusion. The premises are irrelevant to the conclusion. So the first particular fallacy here, and we looked at this last time, is the argumentum ad baculum. In other words, it says, accept the truth of my conclusion on the basis of a threat that I make, either a physical threat, right? A loan shark that says, we need a payment by the end of the week or we're going to break your arm, or it does not have to be the threat of physical force to be an argumentum ad baculum. And again, what I said before was, in the Middle Ages, you've heard of the scholastic philosophers in medieval monasteries. Well, they did a lot of study of logic, and many of the Latin names that come down to us for these fallacies were given them by the scholastic philosophers in the Middle Ages, who wrote a lot of their work in Latin, some modern language. Okay? But literally it means an appeal to the state. You know, I'm going to whack you if you don't accept my conclusion as true. Well, the point is, from a practical standpoint, maybe you should accept the conclusion, but logically, there's no connection between a threat that you're being offered and whether you should accept the conclusion as true. Even if, and so, I mean, very often, you know, in business, and I mean, in business ethics, well, let me go back. In business ethics, very often, you know, people are forced in their job situation to make ethically questionable choices because they're being pressured by their boss. Their boss says, look, you're an accountant. If you want to continue with our firm, you need to fudge these figures a little bit because our quarterly report is not going to look as good as we want it to look. You know, so there's an argumentum ad baculum. You as an accountant might be looking for another job, or you might be denied a promotion if you don't accept my conclusion, and the conclusion of my reasoning is that you ought to fudge figures for the annual report to the stockholders. Well, you know, the threat has nothing logically to do with whether or not it's true. Maybe from a prudential standpoint, you know, you want to do something, but not logically. Now, the another type of argument where you find this, I mean, this is even taught. Things like this are even taught as sales techniques. You know, I remember a kid coming to my door to sell magazine subscriptions. Like, you know, help me now, get this, scholarship and all that. It's going to be, bad. To buy a magazine subscription from me. Well, the point is, even if true, even if I'm going to be in a bad situation unless you accept my conclusion and buy my product, there's no connection between, So this basically says, take pity on me, and I made up this one, but this is the kind of thing that occurs. Door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman says, "Oh, like, I've been out here all day in the hot sun. I haven't made a sale yet. My boss is going to be, really ticked with me. How about buying a vacuum cleaner from me today?" Well, you can see that even if it's true that I'm in a miserable situation, and for a while I worked in the business world. I sold cable door to door. I actually made quite a bit of money doing it because I was good at it. But I know what it is to be out there in the hot sun. But the point is, it has nothing to do with whether that vacuum cleaner is good vacuum cleaner to buy. In other words, I'm not giving you a good reason for the truth of the premise that vacuum cleaner X is the vacuum cleaner for you. You see how the truth of I'm having a miserable day, therefore you ought to buy vacuum cleaner X. How there's, even if it's true that I'm having a lousy day as a salesman out there, it has nothing to do with whether you should accept the truth conclusion that you ought to buy this vacuum cleaner from me. So basically, what we're doing in some of these is we're making an emotional appeal. We're asking somebody to make their decision not for good rational reasons, not for reasons having to do with the truth of the conclusion, but for an emotional reason, right? Take pity on me and buy my product, right? Emotionally empathize with me and buy my product. But from a logical point of view, there aren't any connections between the premise and conclusion, and yet this is something like this is still taught as a sales technique. Why? Because it's effective. Because some people will take pity on you and buy your product for no other reason than that. Now, the other type of argument, there are several forms of this. It's called the argumentum ad populum. Literally, it means to the people. And your book talks about a direct argument ad populum. In a direct argument, I, as a person committing the fallacy, am trying to sway an audience or sway an individual emotionally, directly. So it's an emotional appeal, but it's not. I'm not just appealing to pity. I'm making an appeal to some other emotion. It could be patriotism. It could be fear. But in the direct argument ad populum, which means literally to the people. So in the direct form, I, the arguer, am speaking, say, to a crowd of people, but I'm trying to get them to agree with me emotionally and to make their decision to follow me, either to vote for me or to buy my stance. I'm trying to get them to make their decision on an emotional basis that really has nothing to do with the truth of the conclusion. So you get some examples. Sometimes you can have a mob mentality. Hitler appealed to German nationalism to try to get people on board with him. Here I have our buddy Al Gore trying to sway people. The direct one attempts to convince people of a conclusion by arousing emotions like enthusiasm or fear. So Al Gore, some people have criticized him for using just emotional appeals. His emotional attempts to engender fear of the alleged dangers of global warming in his listeners. This is a quote from one of Gore's speeches. We're facing an unimaginable calamity requiring large-scale preventive measures to protect human civilization as we know it. Right? Unless we get out there, and enact strict measures, and all, get out of our SUVs into electric cars and all that. Horrible things are going to happen. So he's appealing to people's emotions to try to, get them on his side. In this case, it's the fear, right? So that's an ad populum. So in a direct one, the speaker who commits the fallacy is directly appealing to some group and trying to create an emotional response, enthusiasm, fear, in that group. Now, in the indirect approach, you're more or less talking to individuals separately and appealing to some emotion that's either appealing to them, right? Appeal to their vanity. You get a quote, the few, the proud, the Marines, right? Or appeal to some people, want to buy something because they want to, for snobbish reasons. You see the appeal to snobbery. A Rolls Royce is not for everyone. If you qualify as one of a select few, the distinguished classic may be seen and driven at British Motor Cars Limited, right? So you might have an appeal to an emotion like snobbery. And here's one that I thought is one of the best ones I've ever seen on television. And I'm going to play it if I can. Let's see. Okay. Yeah. Look at how this appeals to snobbery, saying, "Hey, don't go for the old-fashioned luxury of a BMW or a Mercedes or old luxury around your home. You want to go for the new luxury of an Audi." But this does such a good job of that. Look at this commercial from YouTube. You've probably seen it on TV at one time or another.
Good night, Gluttony. A farewell long awaited. Good night expected.
All these trappings of wealth and luxury. The horse scene. The expensive dog.
And good night, Stuffy.
Expensive couplings, etc.
Good night, old luxury, and all of your wares. Good night, bygones, everywhere. Good morning, illumination. Good morning, innovation. Good morning, unequaled inspiration.
So you want the new progressive luxury of an Audi, get away from the old luxury. So they're trying to, again, it's like an appeal to snobbery, but it doesn't have to be an appeal to something like that. I mean, the hip hop culture was appealed to. Remember the Kia? Kias don't sell for as much. They're not appealing to this same audience. But, you have these big roads getting out of the Kia and break dancing. Basically, that is not an appeal to snobbery, but it's an emotional appeal, to values, that might be like your generation. What I'm saying is, it doesn't have to be snobbery, but you can commit this fallacy when you're basically making an appeal to some type of emotion that your audience relates to, right? So So the indirect approach targets individuals. Now the other one that we see a lot, and I'm forgetting to make a separate slide, but I have some examples of it, is the bandwagon argument. We've seen that argument a lot. Hey, everybody's buying product X, so you ought to jump on the bandwagon and buy product X. Well, just because a lot of people are doing something doesn't necessarily mean that that's the right choice to do, right? But we see this in advertising all the time. And look at now here are some examples that I basically came across. Now look at this one. Here's a writer who is down on the president, but he also wants us to feel something about him and empathize with him. Look what he says. Yes, I find very little hope and change in the concept of having had to work my life, work my way through college with 3 jobs, only to be asked to support the socialist agenda of a pot-smoking community organizer from politically corrupt Chicago who may in fact care little about the safety and security of our great nation. Now, this also illustrates the point. We're going to look at another argument, maybe by the end of the, if not at least next time, called ad hominem arguments, where you attack a person, and so sometimes a piece of text can commit more than one fallacy. This definitely has what we'll see is called an abusive ad hominem argument, where instead of talking about somebody's position or their politics or their reasoning, what's he doing? He's attacking the president directly, right? But the reason I put this first is, look how the guy wants to get you on his side and get you to somehow agree with what he says. Hey, pity me, right? I've had to work 3 jobs to go through college. Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye. Mr. Rollins is one of those professional, administrative assistants I've ever had at any institution. She did not have to run the seats, okay? But she does. These are the same as the ones I gave out before. I had some left over that I gave to the first 13 people through the door. And I don't care if you want one of the other ones, you want one of these, you can get one of these too. But they're the same. There's no change in the file. So I'm not trying to embarrass anybody, but if you need one because you didn't get one of the ones from last semester, it's just raise the hand. Okay. Keep the passes back to the back. Again, I didn't know if these would come today at all. So everyone has one in this front? Passes back to the very back. And actually, you can pass it back to the you need one of these. As I said, everyone in the office is going to get a printout of these. Okay, you got one. You got one. You have one. Okay, because that a lot of folks take it one. Okay, you have one, but you need one. No. Okay. Okay, so you know what the test is. It's due Friday. We're gonna stop this. I wanted to look at a few more examples of the types of fallacies we just went over, just to give you a few more examples of the kind of thing we're talking about. I usually build some into the PowerPoints, but it always helps to see examples of what it is. So we'll pick up with the PowerPoint then next time.